Hello everyone, I'm Matt Mitrovic, the alternate historian. Today I'm doing a Patreon-sponsored video. Those patrons who give $10 or more get to ask me a what-if question that I have to answer. Today's video is brought to you by Arthur Gonzalez Martin, and he asks, what if Operation Valkyrie was successful? Well, let's find out.
For those who don't know, Operation Valkyrie was a German military plan in World War II, where the reserve army would secure control of the government in case civilian control was ever lost, either by Allied bombings or uprisings by the millions of forced laborers in Germany. It was modified by a cadre of conservative nationalist German military officers, including Klaus von Stauffenberg and Henning von Treschow, and I apologize for my pronunciations of their names, who thought Hitler and his Nazis were leading Germany to defeat.
Despite their opposition to Hitler, many of the plotters were anti-democratic and even sympathetic to Hitler's ideology. Some even participated in the massacre of Jews and other civilians in Europe. Just something to consider as we continue to evaluate this timeline.
The overall plan was simple. Assassinate Hitler, and then blame certain Nazi officials of trying to stage a coup. The reserve army would seize control of the government ministries, Himmler's headquarters in East Prussia, and other sites. The conspirators would form a new government and try to seek a negotiated peace with the Western Allies, so that Germany could focus its attention on defeating the Soviet Union. Best case scenario for the plotters was that the Western Allies would agree to peace as long as Germany removed occupation troops from France and other countries in Western Europe, while the German army could then concentrate its forces on the Soviets and either defeat them outright or force them to agree to a negotiated peace as well. Several attempts were made to kill Hitler, but the most successful attempt happened on July 20th, 1944. Stauffenberg had managed to sneak a briefcase bomb into a meeting Hitler was attending at his Wolf-Lair's headquarters in East Prussia. The plan originally called for 2 bombs, but he only managed to plant 1. Stauffenberg then found a reason to leave the meeting, and when he heard the bomb go off, he assumed Hitler was dead. In reality, Hitler had survived after someone accidentally moved the bomb behind a large table leg, shielding him from the brunt of the blast. Nevertheless, in the confusion, some of the plotters began to carry out Operation Valkyrie, thinking he was dead. When it was learned Hitler was still alive, many of the plotters switched sides or committed suicide. Over 7,000 people were arrested in connection with the plot, and close to 5,000 were executed. Popular General Erwin Rommel was also implicated in the plot, but was given the option of suicide rather than a full trial to preserve his image with the German people. Since then, a successful Operation Valkyrie has become a popular scenario in alternate history, and has been the focus of such books as Douglas Niles and Michael Dobson's Fox on the Rhine.
But could the plotters have achieved their goal of forming a new government in Germany and establishing peace with the Western Allies so they could focus on fighting the Soviets? Probably not.
By mid-1944, the writing was on the wall for Nazi Germany. The German armies were in full retreat across the Eastern Front, and Western allies were landing troops in Normandy. Even if the plotters had assassinated Hitler and formed a new government, it's doubtful they could have negotiated a peace with the West. The Big Three had already agreed to accepting nothing less than unconditional surrender from Germany, and I doubt the Western allies would risk antagonizing Stalin when victory was so near. Even if the Western Allies had agreed to a negotiated peace, it is still possible for the Soviets to defeat the Germans on their own. Between June and August of 1944, the Soviets launched Operation Bagration, which saw the complete destruction of an entire German army group. By the time the plotters seized control of the government and negotiated a peace with the Western Allies, the Soviets could have already been knocking on the door of Berlin. If Hitler had been killed, Himmler and the SS may have opposed the plotters and could have rallied enough army units to their side to cause a civil war to break out. This could have ended the war earlier, but only because the breakdown of order back home would have led to the complete collapse of the Eastern and Western fronts.
So even if Operation Valkyrie was successful, the war would still end with Germany's unconditional surrender. Just the details would be different. That being said, was a negotiated peace with the Western Allies completely impossible? Perhaps not.
There were multiple attempts on Hitler's life during World War II, some as early as October 1939. If Hitler had died earlier, perhaps before the German loss at Stalingrad, then maybe, just maybe, a German government purged of high-ranking Nazis and replaced by military officers and anti-Nazi civilians seeking peace could have negotiated something that allowed Germany to maintain territories it obtained from before the war or even after it began. What this would mean for those murdered during the Holocaust is unknown, but I would assume this new government would be unsympathetic to the Jews and other victims of the Nazis.
You see this scenario play out in Second Front by Alexander Grace. Granted, the point of divergence is the Allies invading southern France in 1942, but it ends with the generals of Germany deciding to assassinate Hitler and then neutralize the SS and the Nazi Party.
Afterwards, under the assumption that the war was lost anyway, they come up with a new strategy where they continue to resist the Soviets in the east, but only give token resistance against the Allies in France, thus allowing most of the German infrastructure to remain intact. When Germany did surrender, it was as united whole and not split in half by the victorious Allied armies in our timeline.
In conclusion, a successful Operation Valkyrie wouldn't have changed the outcome of the war, given how dire the situation was for Germany in 1944. Himmler and the Nazis could have resisted the army, while the Western Allies would have accepted nothing less than the unconditional surrender of Germany.
People, however, are still fascinated by Operation Valkyrie. Films and television shows have covered the topic, and there will probably be more in the future. In my opinion, people remember of Operation Valkyrie because it is evidence that not all Germans are Nazis, but they ignore the fact that the plotters, even by their time standards, weren't saints either.
It is still an interesting piece of World War II history, and it should be remembered as a last desperate attempt to save a nation from total destruction. Well, that is all I have to say in the subject. If you like what I do, please comment, subscribe, or support me on Patreon. You might get a video like this. I'm Matt Mitrowitz, the Alternate Historian. Bye-bye.